Hey, it's Burgess. If you are a veteran listener of BLS, then you are well acquainted with our love of Vermont road names. Every summer, we try to uncover the origin story of some of the state's most peculiar. And so, for the show's 10th birthday this year, in predictable public radio style, we have made a tote bag. This one is an ode to some of our favorite road names over the years. We're talking Sawney Bean, Popple Dungeon, Gertz Knob, quality road names. And this is a quality tote. I've got it here with me, and it's solid. It's a black bag, it's got a white hand-drawn design showing signposts with these road names pointing in every which way, and a button closure. I mean, what more could you ask for? You can get your hands on one when you become a member for $10 a month. Just head to bravelittlestate.org/donate or tap the link in the show notes to get started. And speaking of road names, our 9th annual Brief History of Vermont Road Names will be available soon. It features stories about Green Dolphin Drive, Butternut Gutter, and Old Shin Cracker Lane. We're getting excited. I hope you're excited. Make sure that you follow the show on whatever app you're hearing this message on so that you don't miss it. Okay, thanks for your support, and on with the show.
From Vermont Public and the NPR network, this is Brave Little State. I'm Josh Crane. 10 years ago, this month, we released the very first episode of this show. It was about the past, present, and future of the Vermont accent. So today, as we celebrate and reflect on a decade of BLS, we're going to do something a little different. Instead of chasing down leads and crisscrossing the state to satisfy your curiosity about one Vermont story or another, we're going to indulge your curiosity about the show itself. A few months ago, Team BLS gathered in the part of the state we consider to be the show's spiritual home. I'm talking about the Upper Valley, and we'll get to why we call it that in a few minutes. We welcomed friends and fans to Northern Stage in White River Junction for an event we called Behind the Mic with Brave Little State.
Thank you all for coming out tonight. It's so nice to see you all here.
We lifted the hood on how we make some of our all-time favorite episodes.
I went to the Tunbridge World's Fair with my microphone, and I basically cold approached anyone who looked like old enough to have been at the fair at that time.
We talked about different approaches for tackling tough questions.
In that first day, we went to the library to talk to historians. We went to a dentist's office. I was just trying to keep up.
And we answered questions from the audience.
My name is Eric from West Fairleigh, Vermont.
Hi, I'm Ella. I'm from Bradford.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm from Bethesda, Maryland.
We had a really great time. And now we want to share that night with all of you. If you keep listening, you'll also hear some pretty embarrassing bloopers from making the show.
I think Josh deserves a round of applause for sharing that.
Sabine, Burgess, and I were joined on stage by BLS founding mother Angela Evansy. Angela led the evening's proceedings, and she shared some really lovely reflections on the early days of the show and how it's grown over the last decade. All of that is coming up right after this break.
Support for Brave Little State comes from Sunset Lake Cannabis, serving up sun-grown cannabis products throughout Vermont. The farmers at Sunset Lake Cannabis know cultivating a sustainable community involves supporting independent journalism. Find a retailer near you at sunsetlakecannabis.com. Cannabis use may slow reaction time, never drive after using. Learn more at letstalkcannabisvt.com. And Johnson Family Foundation, supporting Hunger-Free Vermont's work to ensure Vermonters have access to the food resources they need when they need it most. hungerfreevt.org.
Thank you all for coming out tonight. It's so nice to see you all here. And thank you to Northern Stage for hosting. It's such an honor to be on the stage. I've seen some incredible shows here over the years. And it's really fun to be up here tonight to take you all behind the mic, behind the scenes. I'm Angela Evansy, and I'm really pleased to introduce Burgess Brown. Hello, Burgess.
Hi, everyone.
Wow. Josh Crane. Hello, Josh. And Sabine Pooks. Hello, Sabine. And in advance of tonight, we decided we're not going to do titles. We want to keep it informal. But if you're not familiar with the history of the show, I co-created the show. And these fine folks make it so, so well right now. It is such a joy to be a listener as you all carry forward the BLS torch. So really excited to share the evening with you tonight. Something you might not know is that from the very beginning, Brave Little State has always had a foothold in the Upper Valley. I moved here in 2015, and we made our first episode in 2016. And so we've always sort of like had a home here. At the time, I was working out of the original Stetson studio at King Arthur Flower. And I think if it weren't for the coffee and cookies right upstairs, like the show would not have made it. And we have some other Upper Valley connections on the team. So I'd love to hear from each of you how proximal you are to the Upper Valley and what your go-to Upper Valley destination is. Sabine, let's start with you.
So I live in the kind of contested Upper Valley region of Bethel, South Royalton, which is totally Upper Valley, but also like White River Valley. And my go-to spot for sure is the South Royalton Co-op. It's a great store, yeah.
I'm Josh. I live in Norwich, although sort of Thetford. It's like right on the edge. And I would say my biggest go-to spot is Union Village Dam, close by. Underappreciated, I would say.
And I'm the outlier. I live in Burlington. So my go-to spot is Babe's Bar in Bethel, which is maybe an out-of-towner thing to say, but I love it.
I don't know if this is the right crowd to share this with, but I have a little one at home. And so my new favorite places are the places that open very early in the morning. And I want to give a shout out to the open gym at Northern Lights Gymnastics, 8:45 to 9:45 every Saturday morning. It's a great spot. So we're going to chat a bit tonight, but want to leave a lot of room for your questions too. So please start thinking about what they might be. But first, the team wanted me to share a little bit of the origin story of Brave Little State. And I was telling Sabine earlier that we actually literally, my co-creator, Alex Keefe, and I literally had like a water cooler conversation to sort of hatch the plan to start Brave Little State. At the VPR building, we were kind of like both printing out our projects or whatever, standing by this water cooler, and just kind of got to talking like, wouldn't it be cool to start a show where we could do things that we can't do in regular news stories? But that was just one small part of it. I had always hoped to have a place where we could tell stories that stretch out and have a sense of humor, a place where we could both celebrate Vermont and interrogate it, sort of get at the myths that need to be busted about this place, surface obscure histories, and elevate regular stories, regular people's stories, and bring a sort of like collective spirit to it all. This idea that like we're all in it together. And it's not just journalists over here delivering the stories to you over here, like we're all working on it together. And it's been really fun to see it take shape ever since. Our very first episode is one that people still talk about to this day. I always get comments about like this episode. I'm like, we have made literally over 200 episodes, but this is the one that everyone loves to sort of reminisce about. So it was about the Vermont accent, and we'll play a little clip.
It was a way of life, what it is. You can't do anything else. I mean, a lot of years you don't hardly just get by, you know.
Yeah. And the reason we're hearing this is that nowadays Fred is exceptional. Julie says his upbringing and his relative isolation, working on this rural farm for years, it all means that hearing this tape is like sticking your ear in the past and listening to how Vermonters talked decades ago.
So they put me on a Vermont Transit bus down in Unhill Flats for 15 cents. And my grandpa Fletcher picked me up with that little Chevy pickup there at the corner store on 15.
It does feel like time traveling, except that Fred is very much alive now.
Right. He still lives in Fletcher. He's now in his mid-70s. We did reach out to him, though he didn't get back to us. But Julie gave us this tape with Fred's permission because she says it's not just his way of talking, but even his ideology.
And one of the things I love about that clip is that surprise, right, where you hear that this guy's still alive, he's still around. And that's sort of just in that little subtle way, challenging your assumptions, right? Like you kind of think you know what's going on, but we'll sort of complicate that a little bit for you with a very light touch. I thought Al did a great job with that. So bringing that element of surprise. And, I think fundamentally what has always been the core driving ethos of BLS is that the audience is at the center of everything we do. And so tonight we'll talk a little bit about the process, how it all works, how these stories come together, how much thought the team puts into taking such care with your questions and with the stories that need to be told about Vermont, and the audience at the center of everything we do. And so, the first point that we really want to emphasize is the importance of the winning question asker. The winning question asker is the celebrity of every BLS episode. They live large in our minds. I still think about question askers, and I'd love to hear from from some of you who your some of the most standout question askers you've worked with have been.
Yeah, so mine is definitely actually the very first episode that I ever reported for Brave Little State. The question asker from that episode was named Elvira Dana from Montpelier, and she submitted this question that was just so bizarre. It was about a tooth that was embedded in a retaining wall on East State Street. And I had just moved to Montpelier to East State Street, and I thought, what is going on here? And so I set up a meeting with Elvira to just really try to suss out if this was even a question that we could take on, and try to get to the bottom of this a little bit. But she kind of had other plans for our very first meeting and started kind of reporting herself right away. So here's Elvira.
This is perhaps the most pressing news item of our time and of our community.
The tooth is in a prime location for foot traffic. Workers coming and going from downtown offices and schools letting out just around the corner. Elvira seems to know everyone in town and doesn't let a passerby pass by without interrogation.
The tooth in the wall. What do you know about it? I'm working on a very important mystery. Do you know about the tooth in the wall? Mr. Marlier, the tooth in the wall. Tell us. A tooth. Do you know about a tooth stuck in the wall? Oh, hi. So this was, what a score. I mean, yeah, I was new in town and she literally knew everyone. And this was something that, again, I was showing up just to try to figure out if it was even possible to report. And then in my mind, this was going to take weeks to try to solve this mystery. And we did it in like 2 days because she was just like dogged. I mean, in that first day, we went to the library to talk to historians. We went to a dentist's office. So yeah, like when you get a question asker like that who's just so excited about their question and wants to kind of come along for the investigation with you, it's such a blast. I was just trying to like keep up, basically.
Yeah, I was gonna say I loved that episode, and I remember listening to it. It's almost like, oh, this story is actually happening to Burgess. Like he's just like in those scenes with Elvira.
Yes, I at one point I think I like called her my assistant, and it was like, no, we all know how this is going, actually.
Josh, what about you? Who comes to mind for you?
So the person who comes to mind is named Heather Channon. And I should say the reason I really do this work in the first place is because of a show called This American Life. And some of my favorite episodes are when they spend really absurd amounts of time in one place. And so there's an episode where they spent 2 full days at a rest stop or 24 hours at the same diner. And so I saw Heather's question, and Heather's question was, who are all the people who use the Vermont park and rides? So for some reason, I thought it would be a good idea for the 3 of us to spend 12 straight hours at the same park and ride. And before we did this, I sent a note to Heather, and I said, hey, we're going to be hanging out there for a long time. If you have any time in between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., you should stop by and say hi. I didn't know if she would come or not. And literally I think it was like 12:30 p.m. This was late summer. It was really hot. We had just eaten lunch. We were all like zapped. We had been like it was like hour 6 or 7. We were really tired, hot. Heather comes and revives all of us. And it was just this moment where I was like, wow, question askers, not only are they sharing their curiosity, but they're literally like keeping us going during this reporting marathon. And so we got a little clip of Heather. So could you introduce yourself and explain what brings you to this park and ride?
I am Heather.
Heather Channon of South Burlington, our park and ride muse, the question asker who inspired this episode.
And I asked the question a few months ago or so, why are all of the park and rides in Vermont so popular and full? And what are people using them for?
And she drives by this park and ride all the time.
So I'm like, what is happening at this?
There's so many cars over there.
Yes, always so many cars at this park and ride specifically.
And now, compelled by some podcasters, Heather is one of them.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for stopping by.
Yeah, thank you.
This has actually revived us.
Saved the day.
Yeah.
And so if you've ever driven on 89 North, exit 11 near Richmond, it is that giant park and ride that you can see from the highway. And we met a lot of interesting characters that day.
So it's definitely a sort of a signature move of the show to invite the question asker to shape the episode, whether by taking Burgess on a wild goose chase in Montpelier, or just suggesting like, who do you think we should talk to answer this question? What sorts of stories do you think will get at this? And I often like the question askers are just a perfect way into a story that we would never be able to think of on our own. But that's not the only way that I think BLS, especially under y'all's tenure, is keeping it really like dynamic and fresh in how you answer questions. So, and I'll just say, mostly as a listener now, right? So I'm often receiving the episodes that you all are putting out without being involved directly myself, and it's such a delight. Both to learn the answer to the question, but to see how you do it, right? And I'm always so delightfully surprised by like the approach you've taken, something really creative. So how do you bring that variation? What are some of the ways that you think about kind of adjusting your approach on any given episode?
Yeah, so I think something that's really exciting and also challenging about working on a show like this is there's essentially like infinite ways to answer every question, like infinite approaches or people to talk to or storylines to go through, or there's kind of this like big task ahead. So we've kind of developed some tools in our toolbox that we'll lean on. And one has to do with when we tell a story that has a lot of history to it, which are a lot of the stories that we do. And, kind of the least interesting way to tell a historical story would be to have one of us just kind of narrate it ourselves and maybe to put some music underneath. But that can get kind of dull, especially when the history is long. And so we really like to find either tape from old meetings or, first-person sources that remember a time, or maybe who knew someone who remembered a time who can sort of voice up, that history so that it's just a lot more dynamic. So the example I'm going to give for this one is a couple years ago, we did an episode about why there are no strip clubs in Vermont. And that's a good example of a story that started where there were 100 different directions it felt like we could go down. And eventually we decided to start the story with the disappearance of strip shows at the county fair. They were also called girly shows. And those shows disappeared in the 1970s. So we wanted to find people who remembered that time and who could speak to what those shows were like. So I went to the Tunbridge World's Fair with my microphone, and I basically cold approached anyone who looked like maybe they had were old enough to have been at the fair at that time. Yeah. And it was really, really fun. And here's some tape from that. Hi, sorry. Hi, my name is Sabine. I'm a reporter with Vermont Public. I'm doing a historical story about the girly shows that they used to have here.
Oh, God, he'll tell you.
I never got into one.
Why not?
Because I was too young.
How old did you have to be?
I don't know. We used to sneak in, try to get under the tent, but they always caught us. That was a long time ago, though.
He and his brother. He's not talking about me. He and his brother.
Did you go to the shows? Do you remember them?
Once.
Once?
Yep.
Can you give me some memories?
Oh, boy. All of the girly shows.
Do you remember the girly shows?
Yeah. They called this a Drunkard's Reunion, the fair.
Drunkard's Reunion?
Drunkard's Reunion, yeah. And the girly shows were right down at the very other end of the fair where you go in. And my folks said, well, I was, probably 15, 16, they said, you can go to the fair, but don't go near the girly shows.
So fun. Like top 10 reporting assignments of all time.
It's tough to top that one. But another strategy we lean on a lot is we love to find adventures all around the state. And so if there's any question that lends itself to just getting out and doing something, we try to go do it. And so a couple of years ago, we had a question about invasive species, and it was, what invasive species has been the most destructive in the state of Vermont? We ended up focusing on Japanese knotweed, and I was in touch with our state biologist, Grace Glynn, and she suggested that we meet up, and she wanted to show me some rare plants. She literally sent me like a pin on a map because it was a location you'll hear in the clip. We're not supposed to broadcast exactly where it is, but I didn't know what I was getting myself into until we pulled over on the side of a highway. I was holding my recording gear, and she was like, yeah, hop that guardrail, and it was just like a steep embankment. And so this is a clip from that moment in the episode. You need one of those bumper stickers that says like stops frequently or something.
Yeah, brakes for
rare
plants.
Rare plants.
You get better.
Grace is going to help me gain more of an appreciation for the why. Why do people try to manage invasive species at all? For her, it's all about what we lose if we don't. She's taking me to one of the region's most fragile ecosystems. So fragile that I'm not allowed to tell you its exact location.
We try to be pretty secretive about this one.
What I can say is that it's on the Connecticut River, right on the Vermont-New Hampshire border. There's no path to get there. It's so unmarked that Grace actually drove right by it, and we had to circle back about 100 yards to find it.
Okay, we're finally here. Let's find a good spot.
Okay, just for people who can't see where we are on the side of a highway with no discernible landmark. So we're just hopping.
That's why I drove by it. I can never remember.
We're just hopping a guardrail right now.
Yeah, and there's a good spot to jump. You'd think there would be a path from how often we've come down here.
I know. You should hear the raw recording from that experience is just all like the microphone being like whacked by branches. So it was a tough editing assignment.
So I love an adventure as well, and but sometimes we get questions that are like really deeply personal, and in some ways those can be much harder to source, to find someone who has experienced something, that speaks to this personal question. And oftentimes we'll turn to maybe a method that you wouldn't expect, which is Reddit, which is, if you're not familiar, an online forum, and there's a particular, they're called subreddits for Vermont specifically, so Vermont-based forums. And every now and again we'll jump in there and post a call out. So the one I'm thinking of specifically, we were working on a story with our reporter Nina Keck about childlessness. So our question asker was sort of struggling to reimagine a life for herself without children. And had asked for advice and support. And so we basically passed that along to this online community, just sort of put that out there and asked, has anyone experienced something like this? Do you have advice for our question asker? And of course, Nina went and talked to OBGYNs and researchers and all these other people. But I think some of the most profound parts of that episode came from regular Vermonters responding to our Reddit post with their own advice and their own experience. And so one of those came from Kat Maravich, and this was her advice for our question asker.
Find a dream that you can grow into. I don't know, start a business or hike the Appalachian Trail or write a book or whatever it is. Find a project that will take you years and years to grow into, because that's what a family is.
Yeah, just really special. And Kat had a bunch of really wonderful advice, and Nina was actually able to put Kat and our question asker into contact after making the episode. And actually, I'm not sure. I don't know if I haven't heard from them in a while, but yeah, I know they met and talked. So yeah, that just felt really sweet. And again, like, it's hard to figure out exactly how to put these pieces together when these really personal stories are involved. But it's really wonderful when it does work out.
So one more storytelling strategy is sometimes we get a question that has a pretty bureaucratic, sort of like logistical answer. And so one of the first questions that I tackled for the show was about moose crossing signs. Basically, how does the Vermont Agency of Transportation decide where to put moose crossing signs along the roads? And so, there's an answer that involves, it's like a sort of what you might expect. There's like a protocol. But in telling this story, I wanted to find someone who could help illustrate the stakes of getting that placement right, and sort of drivers being aware that sometimes moose cross the road. And so that's when I spoke to Carl Brandon. It was a Sunday night in July. Carl and his wife at the time, Anne, were driving on I-89. They were driving home to Randolph after attending a party in Thetford.
So I rounded the curve, a slight curve to the right at a crest of a little hill, and then it goes down a dip. And there were cars coming the other way, so my headlights were dipped. And all of a sudden, I say, moose. And about a tenth of a second later, I hit the moose. I went right between her legs. And so she hit the windshield, and the front of the roof was where the moose hit. And so all the internal organs wound up inside the car, and the rest of the moose went over the top.
As gross as this sounds, it's not all that unusual. Moose are so tall that cars take their legs out from under them, so they fall through the windshield and into the car instead of bouncing off the front bumper. It leads to quite a mess.
And we completely grossed out the ambulance people because we covered with moose guts. And they thought I might have had a laceration on my head because I had a lot of blood on my head, but it was moose blood, as it turned out.
As it turned out, both Carl and Anne walked away with nothing more than a few scrapes and bruises. So, kind of an intense story, and those sort of personal anecdotes really help us bring these questions, our episodes, to life, and help us add some color to what would otherwise be sometimes pretty straight answers.
But sometimes we do go the more straight answer route, like not as frequently, but it's kind of a treat to do it when we do. And we sort of think of these as like explainer episodes. So a recent episode we did that we think of as an explainer was an episode about the Vermont National Guard. A newsier episode. We were kind of dealing with like a time hook. It felt very relevant to be answering a question we had gotten about the Vermont National Guard. And those, for episodes like that, sometimes we'll sort of just break something down, one of us or two of us, and it's very, it's very newsy. We're not dealing as much with tape or sound. We're kind of trying to convey information like as efficiently and like coherently as possible, I would say. So those are fun to do because we don't really do a lot of those. And in reporting those episodes, often when we're talking to sources, so some of us employ like an approach that we call like explain it to me like I'm 5. You go in an interview and you're talking to someone about something that you have no clue about, and you sometimes just have to say, "Can you explain it to me like I'm 5?" Because then we have to explain it to listeners. So that's sort of a fun way to just learn a lot about something and then try to piece it together in a way that will make as much sense to people as possible. And then sometimes we do episodes that are a bit chattier or more conversational. or conversational sounding. I say sounding because often we'll still script those, not all the time, but we really try to make sure that we have like the bones of a conversation before we go into the booth and start recording for one of those. An example of a recent episode we did like that was our 20 questions episode, where we answered 20 questions rapidish fire. And we didn't know the answer to all of our questions ahead of time because we wanted our reactions to be genuine, but we knew sort of the order we were going in. We had an arc to the episode. And so that's kind of a careful balance between knowing too much and not knowing enough, like being prepared, but also not wanting it to sound like we've all already heard what we're going to say. So those are really fun to do too.
I was in our Upper Valley studio recently. It's in the CCV building in White River Junction. Shout out. Erin. Hey, Erin. And Josh and Sabine were working together, I think, on one of these conversational sounding episodes. And these two probably disappeared into the sound booth like 6 different times to retake a certain part of the script. So I just want you all to know how much work it takes to sound so natural and so breezy in those just conversations where you're just absorbing that information, because you put so much thought into making it sound so simple and so clear with a touch of, camaraderie in there. And it's a lot of work. So you've talked us through some of the different kind of modes that you'll click into, or things that you'll try to prioritize to keep such variation in the show. I'm curious, amid all of that, what patterns have emerged for each of you over the years in making these episodes?
I think for me, the thing that stands out the most is that no matter what story I'm working on, I can almost guarantee you that I will be talking to a librarian or a local historian, local archivist, or a town clerk, or maybe all three. And I feel like the people who fill those roles around the state are sort of the lifeblood of Brave Little State. They are sources of information and local connection, and also usually just like amazing characters to include in a story. And I have my appreciation for those folks has grown exponentially over the years, for sure.
I think something that comes up in a lot of episodes is like Vermont as an idea. This is also top of mind because it's part of the episode that we're putting out this week, but so much of like Vermont gets Vermontified, or there's just this Vermontiness, and like how does that come into our ideas of ourselves, and how does that we just played a clip from the strip clubs episode, and that was a big part of that episode because strip clubs aren't very Vermonty, right? And so it's like, what is Vermonty, what is not Vermonty, how, like, what's our self-conception? It's kind of meta because this is a show about Vermont, so we're Vermonty in that way too, but I think it's fun when we get to take that idea and sort of like spotlight it and maybe invert it or challenge it, because it really is such like a strong identity that even a lot of people outside of Vermont have a real conception of too. So that's a fun one.
I think a pattern that I'm still sort of learning to trust in the process of making these is because making an episode like this really is a puzzle. As Sabine says, you can kind of take it in a million different directions and talk to a million different people. And it often starts, at least for me, with like running into a whole lot of dead ends. But I'm learning to trust that there is in every story sort of one person who is going to just break the whole thing open for you. You finally talk to that right person who is just so excited about the topic that you are reporting on, and also knows everyone else that you should be talking to, and is just really down to help us out with that. I think that Vermonters especially just seem to really understand the value and the power of good storytelling and want to help us do that. And I just have to get better at finding that person sooner in the process, I think. It seems to happen like a little late, and then it's like, I want to talk to every single person that you've suggested, but we've got to put an episode out.
I do feel like over the course of making the show, you sort of develop a community of people who not only listen, but also have in some way helped out with an episode or been interviewed for an episode. And I think there are at least a few people here tonight who have, who fill those roles. Will you raise your hands if you've been in an episode of Brave Little State? A couple hands. Nice. So it's just really gratifying that this community sort of builds over time.
We may be coming back to you for help soon, so.
Yeah, stay tuned. All right, we need to take a quick break. When we come back, we take questions from the audience about our voting rounds, unanswerable questions, and episodes that have changed our minds about something. But first, I literally let you behind the mic and share some embarrassing tape from the studio. That's when we come back.
Support for Brave Little State comes from Wendell's Furniture in Colchester, with quality furniture at surprisingly low prices, including a selection of sofas starting at under $800 and mattresses under $500. Come see why Wendell's has over 1,000 Google reviews and a 4.9-star rating. And the 21st annual Kelly Brush Ride, raising funds to empower people with spinal cord injuries to lead active lives. Riders traverse the Champlain Valley with routes between 10 and 100 miles, then celebrate with live music, beer, barbecue, and prizes. September 12th in Middlebury. Register at ride.kbf.org.
Welcome back to Brave Little State. Today, we're listening to a taping of an event we dubbed Behind the Mic. We're just about to hear some audience questions. But first, the bloopers. When I was writing promo copy for this event, I just sort of added that we'd share some bloopers. Mostly because I was like, it's a Monday night. Like, are people actually going to come out to this event? It seemed like something that, might get people out. And so I did feel compelled to bring a blooper. It's not your traditional blooper, but I would argue this is 10 times more mortifying. My least favorite part of the entire process is recording narration. So, you do the reporting, you have the pieces of tape that you want to play, and then you write a script. Mostly we're writing scripts in between the pieces of tape. And then you go into a booth by yourself, typically, and you record those, you read those lines, and you listen to them with great pain in your ears for however long it takes. And so this is a clip from a recent episode I reported about the Norwich Fire Department. And I needed to record the last line of the entire piece, and it took me forever. This is not even the whole thing. I could not subject you to that. I am not proud to share this, but I do believe in transparency. And so here is a clip of me recording narration. Check, check. Okay. Oh, and by the way, a few weeks later, I got word from Matt. Since my time down at the station, 2 new recruits have signed up. And by the way, a few weeks later, I got word from Matt. 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 2 more. 2 more. 2 more. 2 more. 2 more. Oh, and by the way, a few months after my time down at the firehouse, I got word from Matt. 2 more new recruits have signed up. They're not all that painful, but that was an especially painful one.
I think Josh deserves a round of applause for sharing that. All right, we are now really eager to hear your questions. Who has a question for the team? If you do, please raise your hand, and we have 2 folks who are standing by to bring mics into the seating area. I see one question here.
Hi, do you have any idea of how much listening by non-Vermonters goes beyond the state?
We did a survey a couple of years ago, and one of the big surprises for me from the people who filled out that survey, there are a lot of people who grew up in Vermont but don't live here, or went to school here and left, or have some even like little connection to the state, and Brave Little State is sort of their way to stay connected from afar. We lovingly refer to them as Vermont expats. So they're definitely an important part of our audience, and we appreciate them very much.
That question?
All right, I saw another question here, and then we'll go up here next.
Hi, I'm Karen Harris. I also live in Norwich. And I'm just curious if you've ever gotten a question that you just can't crack. Like you talked about dead ends, but are there any that just couldn't make it happen?
That's a great question.
I think we just found it.
I would say for a long time, that park and ride question was sort of my white whale because I knew I wanted to spend 12 hours on a park and ride, but it's really hard to find time to spend 12 straight hours somewhere. But then we did it, and so I can't say that anymore. Do you have one?
Mm-mm. I mean, we're pretty. I would say we do a lot of some questions a lot of questions win in voting rounds, and then we sort of have to take them on. And I think even if we can't answer the question in like such a direct way, we might take kind of a back door in, but we also sometimes will pick questions, and those we do a lot of pre-reporting to make sure they're feasible. And often when we put questions in voting rounds, we'll do some pre-reporting to make sure they're feasible. So we kind of insure ourselves against that. But there might, I can't think of any examples.
Well, one of the good examples of pre-reporting you did recently was their recent winning question.
Oh, yeah, this is funny. So, get ready. Guys, this is funny. So we did a recent voting round, and one of the questions we put in it was, why are there so many twins in the town of Sheldon in Franklin County? And obviously that question is amazing, but before putting it in a voting round, we wanted to make sure there was like some truth to it. So I emailed the question asker, I emailed the town clerk, and the town clerk responded, "That's so funny that you asked that. I'm a twin, and the town manager is a twin. Oh, and also my twin works at Vermont Public." So we had to put in the voting round, and it did win. So we're going to be taking it on. Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm from Bethesda, Maryland, so I'm one of those Vermont expats that you talked about. And I'm not a good public speaker, so it's going to be kind of like that blooper reel that you just did. But my question for you guys is, do you all do this full time? Do you have other jobs? Are there more members of the team? Like, what are the sort of logistics behind Brave Little State?
This is it.
So this is sort of the core team, and then we work with a lot of our news reporters. Will rotate onto the show every once in a while, and often they'll tackle questions that are sort of in their, fall under their normal beats, or actually are like totally different, and they're like desperate to do something different. But we love working with them from time to time, and we sort of wear other hats as well. Although this is our main focus.
Yeah, we're full time.
But each of these episodes does take quite a while to make, and so we're all also kind of wearing multiple hats at a time, where like I am both like gonna be like mixing this week the promo for Sabine's episode while also reporting my next episode, while also working with a reporter from the newsroom to start their early reporting process. So we usually have 3 or 4 episodes kind of juggling in the air at a time.
And I would add that each of you contributes reporting to the newsroom as well that doesn't necessarily air under the banner of Brave Little State, which is great. All right. I don't know who raised your hand first. Oh, we have a question ready to go. Thank you.
Yeah, good evening and thank you. My name is Eric from West Fairleigh, Vermont. And my question is, do you ever stack the deck for the voting and put in like your favorite question and a couple you think are going to be total duds? And has that ever backfired on you? Thank you.
Absolutely not.
Can I take this question, actually? Okay, so for as long as we have made this show, my now husband has given me like an incredible amount of grief for the fact that we curate the voting rounds. And he's always like, you pitch yourself as a Democratic show, but there's bias in those voting rounds, and you're handpicking the questions you want to win. And I'm like, we have to simplify the process somehow. This is our best attempt at democratizing it. So I mean, just to say, of course, like there's always some level of curation there. But I don't know. I have never rigged a voting round, and I don't think anyone on this stage has done that either.
And we also get like friends who are like, "You take my question," and it's like, "No, I'm not gonna put your question in a voting round. I know you. You know, we are serious about the sanctity of this process."
I mean, I think you're right that if we tried to truly rig it, the question we would. I mean, that maybe that would happen with Act 250. I feel like there's been a question that I was excited about, but I was like, this one's not going to win. And I think it might have been the Act 250 episode. Does that?
I think it could be. I mean, the thing about our voting rounds is that, yes, our show is based around questions from our audience, from listeners, but there has to be some level of genuine curiosity on whoever's reporting that story as well. And so, I think to your husband, I would say, our curiosity is also relevant in the equation.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you. Next question.
Hi, thanks, you guys. I'm Sarah Lord from Hanover. I have two questions. I'm going to go with one. Have you ever done a question round from kids?
Yeah, we have. Our education reporter at the time, Lola Dufour, was coming up in our reporter cycle, and she, I think, might have even pitched this in her interview for her job, but she wanted to do a Brave Little State voting round all just from high school students. And so she went out and talked to teachers and went around and really worked to get representation from the whole state, from high school students all around the state. We picked three questions from high school students and put those. We didn't have them. They weren't just high school students voting. We put them up for a general voting round, but all the questions were sourced. And the winning question was about hunting, basically, and like why it's such a tradition and why it was from definitely a high school student who was kind of like, I don't get the big deal, in a high school that a lot of her classmates hunted. And that was one of my favorite episodes. It was such a great episode. Lola and I got up at 4:30, which is actually kind of late for hunting, and went out and did some hunting together.
Or young people as interns on your team?
We do. We are interviewing interns right now for our summer internship program, and yeah, we've had a steady stream of interns for the last 2 or 3 years almost.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a blast. It's such fun to have students, and all of us get in the classroom at various points too, especially at the university level, which we all really enjoy.
Hi, I'm Ella. I'm from Bradford. I'm curious, you guys have done some really powerful episodes. I work in public health, and there's been some really great episodes about recovery housing in Vermont and around housing in Vermont and the crisis. And I'm curious, have there been any episodes that you've done that have like really flipped the way that you thought about things on their head? I always use the episode around housing in conversation with people because I often am talking with people who say, well, there's people coming from all over to Vermont because of the way that our system is set up. And I'm like, actually, no, there's not. So I'm just curious, have you had any of your like fundamental things shifted?
I worked on that episode with Carly Berlin, our housing reporter, and that was genuinely like pretty shocking to me to hear that statistic, that I think it's 3%, or it's a very low percentage of people are coming from away who are unhoused in Vermont. But the other, like to Josh's point about sort of our own curiosity coming into this, I've only been in Vermont for 2.5 years, and so I'm surprised every episode, basically. Like it all feels new and fresh and exciting to me. Like I kind of don't have a ton of assumptions, and so it's I think people are sometimes like, oh, it's strange that you're like making a show about Vermont as someone so new to Vermont, but I'm learning these things like from a real genuine place of curiosity right alongside the people we're reporting with. So maybe you guys have better examples.
I mean, what comes to mind for me, I think, is so last February 25, I did an episode about health insurance, and it was sort of, the goal of it was to basically explain why everyone's property taxes were skyrocketing and why everything felt so dire around health insurance and healthcare in particular. And I sort of knew the broad strokes. I read the news, but really digging in and just getting a sense of how small the community of healthcare executives, I would say, are in Vermont. And just there are a handful of organizations that are really shaping that issue for the state. And in true Vermont fashion, I was like, wow, it definitely confirmed how bad it seemed from the outside, but also like these are just like people I called up and I think from the outside it feels sort of huge and abstract, and that was definitely an explainer where like putting it together was useful for me as a Vermonter to just connect to that issue on a deeper level.
Yeah, what comes to mind for me is the series we did, Recognized, about sort of the battle over like Indigenous identity between the Odanak people in Canada and the state-recognized tribes here in Vermont. I think about that series all the time, and it's very much part of the way I am thinking, like moving through Vermont. That one has stuck with me.
Thank you all for coming tonight, and thank you three. Thank you, Sabine, Josh, and Burgess.
Thanks, Andrea.
Thank you to Northern Stage, and thank you to Amy and Em who put on this whole event. Thank you all again. Have a great night.
Thanks for listening to the show, and to everyone who spent the evening with us in White River Junction. It's always a blast to get to see you all face to face. And we're always up for answering your questions about how we make the show at bravelittlestate.org. Oh, and make sure you're following us in your favorite podcast app to catch new episodes. You won't want to miss our next one, our 9th annual Brief History of Vermont Road Names. You'll hear origin stories about Green Dolphin Drive in South Burlington, Butternut Gutter in Arlington, and in tiny Baltimore, Vermont, we check out Old Shincracker Lane.
My first thought was, is there a new Shincracker Road? Then I thought, what the heck is a Shincracker?
This episode was edited and produced by the BLS team. That's Burgess Brown, Sabine Pooks, and me, Josh Crane. Our intern is Sarah Bokelberg, and our executive producer is Angela Evansy. Theme music by Ty Gibbons. Special thanks to Amy Zielinski and everyone from Northern Stage who helped make that event possible. Brave Little State is a production of Vermont Public and a proud member of the NPR network.